right, ready for the second part? We locked the doors, and now we're going to talk about governance, so you can't get out. So I am Jonny Daenen. I'm working for Dataminded for a bit over 2 years, and I am currently a team lead at one of our clients, and I'm also head of knowledge to make sure that we streamline the knowledge within Dataminded. So I'm going to talk about governance, and in particular, how do we sustainably scale our GenAI initiatives in organizations? How do we grow our organization and GenAI products? So we've heard it a few times before already. What do we actually want, especially from a business point of view? We want to be able to deploy AI products fast. Time to market is key. We want to have an ROI. That question was asked before as well. We want to have a good ROI. What is the actual value that we are bringing with our AI products? And finally, we want to trust it. It's especially hard to trust GenAI applications because they're unpredictable. So how do we solve these challenges? Well, we're going to have a look at one of the options to fix those things, and that's data governance. There's multiple things, but tonight we're going to zoom in on the data governance aspects. So there's a few things I want to answer tonight. The first thing is data governance. What does it actually mean? What do we define as data governance from our point of view? And why is it important for generative AI? Why would you invest in data governance? And in the second part, I'm going to talk about how do we start scaling our governance initiatives and our organization and the number of products that we built. All right, let's get started. Part one, data governance and Gen AI. So to explain why data governance is important, I'm going to compare building an AI product to making pancakes. So when I want pancakes, I go to a restaurant or I make them myself, but I want them to taste good. That's the baseline, right? You want to have a good pancake. Other than that, I also don't want to wait too long. If I order one, the time to market for a pancake is crucial for me. It's also something I don't want to pay too much. These prices these days, right? And then finally, if I discover a hair in my pancake, I will never go there again. I've lost my trust. It's the same for an AI product. If I get a good answer, I'm happy. But other than that, I also evaluate the time it takes. Frederick showed that you don't want to wait too long. Do I want to pay 20 euros a month for ChatGPT? Yeah, maybe it's worthwhile. And finally, if I get a weird answer, I will probably not really trust that thing anymore. And we do get a lot of weird answers. So I'm going to take the pancake analogy a lot further than you expected. So suppose I have a friend, he's called Rudy, and Rudy invites me, come over, Jonny, make me some pancakes. First thing I say to Rudy is, I've never been here. Where are your eggs? Where's your flour? Where's your milk? Rudy, of course, it's his home, so hopefully he knows where is the flour, where is the milk, and where are the eggs. So he points me to the right cupboard and says, you can find them there. It's the same thing for building and starting a new AI product. You probably all have a Rudy in your organization, and if you say, I want some employee data, he will say, it's there in that system. I know who to talk to. It's in the Slack database, and that's copied over there. You can find it right there. So data discovery is the first thing you need to do. What do I need to get started with my product? The second thing, I open the fridge at Rudy's and the milk is gone. There is no more milk. He says, I have a full basement full of milk, no worries. I give you my key and you can then access all of this milk. Okay, awesome. In your organization, it's that same Rudy. He's probably an admin of an old Oracle database and he hands you a connection string. He gives you an API key. So you get the keys, you're happy. Rudy unblocked you once again. You have access to the data. Next step, understanding the data. Rudy, he's a special guy and he buys all of his flour at a Chinese shop. Yeah, I said to Rudy, I cannot deal with this thing. I don't know if it's flour or anything else. He says, no problem, I speak Chinese. You're holding icing sugar and not flour. This is the right package. Okay, Rudy is my translator. Phew. In your organization, again, you have a Rudy. You get a weird CSV file, a bunch of images. You're trying to build an HR chatbot. You don't know what is EID, what is PID, some obscure and magic numbers. Rudy says, it's all clear to me. EID is just the employee ID. If you join this other table on that column, you get the right result. Rudy is again the magician. He understands all the data. Next thing, I want reliable data. I start breaking some eggs, and there's a weird smell. Oops, says Rudy, those eggs are from last year. I bring you a batch of fresh eggs. They expired. So I have bad data. I have bad ingredients. This happens a lot. We get data that we didn't expect. We get a lot of magic numbers again, null values, missing records, data that's out of date. I got the 2023 Slack data. People who are not working here yet that are here today, so it's incomplete. So it's not usable. Rudy, apparently he worked 5 years on a script to clean some data, because data cleaning is really hard. So he hands me over his bash scripts and some Python code, and I can run it over the data, and I get usable data. Lots of work recycled, thanks to Rudy, once again. Then I'm stirring my pancake batter, almost done, and I see in the fridge a bunch of blueberries. Blueberry pancakes, what's better than that? So I take up the basket, and Rudy says, no, stop it right there. Those are for my wife. Ooh, sensitive, I say. Indeed, it's sensitive data. Apparently, he is saving it for his 50th anniversary, but yeah, he doesn't want the pancakes. It's the same thing with PII data. I use the Slack data, the employee data, and suddenly Rudy says to me, this column, the amount that people earn, the wages, you cannot put that in your LLM. You cannot fine-tune your model based on that. Okay, Rudy. So we don't use that column. He is the one who knows what data is sensitive and what data is not. And this is a very interesting topic, especially for GenAI. We've talked about fine-tuning. We've talked about RAG models. If you start fine-tuning, you get this famous XKCD. Essentially, you throw everything together, you stir the pile, and you get a model. And that model is really unpredictable. Why? Because you don't know what you can get out of it anymore. You always get different answers. And apparently, there are attacks that can be done on models. This is an older one, but you can interrogate a model in such a way so that it exposes its training data. So this is quite dangerous. So it's the same thing with the blueberries. If I had put them in the pancakes, I could never get them out anymore. If I want to remove them, I would have to start all over. Think about the RAG model that Frederick presented. That's different. We only feed the data when it is needed. So you get a lot more PII controls because you can tweak them based on who is interrogating the data. A lot more control, a lot more predictability, a lot more trust. So we've seen the 5 entities of data governance. I want to discover the data, access the data, understand the data, make sure it's reliable, and the compliance part is also very important. So we have the 5 entities of data that determine the speed, the ROI, and the trust. And in this case, Rudy was my partner. He made sure that we could actually achieve that. He was the one that already knew a lot of things. He was the one who provided me with that script that he took 5 years to develop. But now in the light of GenAI, it's even more difficult. We have the lion of GenAI that's difficult to tame. We don't know how to trust it. So these last phases become extra challenging. And that makes that the first phases need to be extra rigid so that we can build on top of that. All right. So we've covered now the first part. What does data governance mean? We have the 5 entities. And we saw that it's especially important for GenAI to get your data in the right shape. It needs to be high quality. It needs to be good. So let's start scaling up. We have that one chatbot. Rudy helped us. Let's move to the next phase. Next phase, we want 12 AI products tomorrow. We want to have it fast, reliable, cost-effective. We want everything, right? You want to have an HR bot. You want to have a support bot, a help desk bot. We want everything. Of course, that's not really what we do, but we do have high expectations. We expect GenAI to change whatever we build. We want more, and we want it faster. Sadly, if you look at AI cases, and this is an older study, still very relevant, 85% of AI projects fail. And so not a lot remains, of course. And that's also why the question before was very, very useful. What is the actual ROI of your use case? And you only discover that, of course, after you've deployed it, typically, if you can deploy it. If you don't get to deployment, ROI is negative. All right, but how do we avoid this? That's the central question, right? How do we achieve AI products that have a good ROI? And we've seen the data governance, the 5 ilities, they have a high effect on these 3 things. So our data must be in a good shape before we can get good AI products, right? All right. What do we typically see at companies? What happens? You build a first case, whether it's an AI case, a data case, you have your first success. Good ROI, right? Business believes in it, let's invest more. We build more products. But as you can see, what typically happens in the beginning, we combine everything into one product. We have a data pipeline, we have an LLM, we have the data itself, we bundle that into one product, and you start repeating yourself. When you build a second product, you do the same thing. We also need a vector database. Let's also set that up in AWS, and we get a second vector database. So your ROI starts to drop because you're repeating yourself. How do you avoid that? You start consolidating. You try to build layers. You consolidate your tools. We have an LLM set up, we have a vector base, you can easily use it. But also, you start to package data in a reusable product. I already processed my Slack data. You can use it too. It's clean, it's usable. So you get your data products and everything goes up again, right? So all is good, at least up to some degree. And then you enter the spaghetti phase. The spaghetti phase, I'm talking about pancakes, spaghettis, you already had pizza, so we're completing everything. So basically, you start losing the insights in what's going on. If something breaks in all of these change in this whole big mess of data flow, other things will start failing too. If one thing is not maintained, if it's not there on time, you have a cascading effect and everything blows up. And that's what we call the spaghetti phase. Your ROI drops and it becomes increasingly worse. The timeline, it depends on your company. Typically, after a year or so, you start seeing the effects of these things. So that spaghetti phase, essentially, you've built a castle on Rudy's first project that is still lingering around while Rudy is already gone. And you start seeing the following things. We have a lot of duplicate data. There's no documentation. Breaking changes. Data is not there in time. You have projects that are unmaintained. That's a big one. Companies always think, the project is done. Let's move on to the next one. And they leave the rest to die. And then the whole thing collapses. And also people leave. Knowledge leaves. You have to manage this. Especially if you want to scale, you need to manage this. So what is going on now? You have the castle. And this has a bad effect on the 5 governance ilities. It's not really discoverable what's going on. You don't have oversight. It's difficult to get access to data. It's a spaghetti. So your speed, ROI, and trust drop. But wait a minute. What is going wrong? Essentially, we have too many Rudys. We started with that Rudy. He knew everything. He helped us. He was very fast in the beginning. Now Rudy is not doing so well anymore with his castle that he has to maintain. We're actually trying to scale with people. And scaling with people is a no-go, typically. We are on the left side of this image. What are we doing? We are actually, whenever we build a new AI product, we need to staff up. We need more people because we cannot deal with that. We need to add people. You cannot keep adding people, war on talent, and all of that stuff. So you take them away from the existing products and let them die off, put them on a new one, and the castle starts to collapse. You need to move to another strategy. You need to adopt platform thinking. Instead of just treating your tools as a toolbox, we need to offer something that scales in itself and can sustainably grow. And this is a sustainable growth that we want to go for, the right part. Making sure that with a relatively small team, you can build something that supports an indefinite amount of cases. And so how to do that? We have a few tips for you on how we deal with that at clients. So essentially, let's remove Rudy. That's my mission tonight. What can we do to fix that, to fix the 5 dimensions? So let's go over them again. We had Rudy, who helped me discover the data. How can we discover the data that is present in your organization? Well, the first step is to capture what's there. And so there, we typically build a registration process. Whenever you want to do something, whenever you want to build something, let's say I want to build an HR chatbot, I fill in what I want to do, and I also need to supply an owner. I am the owner of the chatbot. I am the contact person. But what do I get in return? Why would I fill this in? I have my AWS account. I can set up my own things, right? Well, you get something in return too. You get the right tools. You get maybe access to that vector database, access to the data lake immediately. And you get some small parts at the data platform that you can store your data, train your model. So you get a toolbox inside your own bubble in return for just filling out a form. So it's a very good ROI for filling that in. The next thing is getting access to the data. Rudy gave us the keys. I think we can all agree that Rudy should not hand me keys. At least it should be in Secret Manager or something like that. But basically, we want to connect those AI products, those data products. How do we connect two of those bubbles? Well, you come up with a process, right? You make a sequence diagram. You first have to add that person, then that. Nobody will look at this or do this. Nobody will execute your process that you invented. And that is what we see often in organizations. You have a board of people, 5 to 10 people deciding on the process, and then they leave and nobody does it. So this is dangerous to do. But if you have a process, you can automate that and you can help people follow the process. So what did we do? We made a very simple request approval system that integrated with the tools they use. Again, they need to fill in who is requesting data. There's an exclamation mark in here that triggers like, this is PII data, be careful with it. They also have to supply who is going to use the data and why am I using the data. In this case, I want Slack check-in messages, like Frederick's bot, and I need access to people's Slack messages because I want to answer specific questions. Then, because we have those two circles, we know the owners, we can automatically ask them for an approval, and we use the Teams approval message. I'm not a fan of Teams, but in this case, Teams has approvals built in, so we just hooked up to it, and now they just get a pop-up. They see, this person is asking this data access for this reason, approve or deny, and the rest happens automatically. So that sequence diagram is no longer needed, but they still follow it. All right, so what did we accomplish? We have an agreement between the owners. We have shared data, but scoped shared data, only that table is shared. And the biggest part is Rudy is at the bottom. He is lonely and not involved anymore. So we don't need Rudy. We don't need a central team to scale. We have a distributed setup that's fully self-managed. Plus, because if you zoom out a bit, we can now connect those circles in the big picture. So we are now able to also get insights on what's going on. This is a screenshot from one of our clients. I put some other labels on it, of course. But basically, what can we now do? We can see the data flow. We start at the top with employee data. We see that it's copied daily, and then we package it in a clean version, and that then goes to 7 other data products. Those are the circles that I talked about. And one of them is the HR bot, a BI dashboard, and some suspicious data product. So the owners can now see how their data is actually used and how it flows through the organization. So you get insights into what's going on. That's the first step of understanding your organization. All right. Step 3, understanding the data. Rudy with his Chinese flower here and the employee ID. He had all the answers. Typically, you look for a data catalog. Self-service way that people can discover the data that's available. They look for something. As I do in this case, I looked for pets, and I can now browse the description of all the columns of related tables. So this is a good way, a data catalog, everybody wants that, right? But how do you get your data inside that catalog? And that's the tricky part, of course. You need to make sure that people label their tables, their images, their columns with metadata. Why would they do that? There's no benefit, and nobody likes writing documentation, right? So, yeah, sometimes you have the stick or the carrot. The carrot is to lure people in. The stick is, of course, when you have to go top down and say, you got to do this. This is your job. A carrot is always better. So we try to educate them, and we also try to reward the owners. For example, if you supply all your tables with correct metadata, you become a gold product. And a gold product has more rights. Maybe you can give them a better SLA, Maybe you can decrease the credits that they use so that they have a reason of filling in that data. This is a real challenging part. You could also offer them LLMs to write the metadata, but that's not trustworthy, as we saw, so be careful with that. And we also try to help them. They don't need to enter it in the catalog. We try to extract it from their own data products. There's a lot of things you can do, but this is a difficult one, getting the right incentive. Next step, data quality. Rudy was so nice that he provided my script that I could clean all the data with, but that's typically also not scalable. So what do we do to make sure our data is reliable? There's many things you can do. Some things that are crucial are test environments. Make sure people can test their queries, their data calculations in an environment. And we typically offer a promotion from dev to test to production or even multiple environments. We also automate that and run the tests whenever they deploy. If they write data tests, you can just run them and give them immediate feedback. Other things you can do, the 4I principle. Rudy can still help. I write new code, a V2 of my product with a bug. Rudy can just review my code before it goes to production. You can also work with data contracts, specify which columns you expose, and if you change a column's name or change or delete a column, you get a warning and you cannot deploy to production. These things are actually guardrails to protect you from mistakes. And again, what can we do here for reliability? We can automate governance checks. Some things that we did is you need to have an owner. If you don't have an owner or somebody left, your product becomes red and you're in violation. If you're running an old version of a data framework, you get a warning. Also something you can now automate. It's not somebody who has to look, it's fully automated, and you can again go for product scoring. If you don't have these things, you cannot be gold, so you pay more. We also have clear responsibilities. If it gives a warning, we have an owner, unless there's no owner, as in my example, that's a bit annoying. Plus, we can also see patterns. We can see which rules are violated a lot, and we can make trainings to make sure that people understand where to find the tools and why to do these initiatives. Great, last point, sensitive data. Rudy with his blueberries, he also discovered the PII data in my tables and said you cannot use this. That's something you need to stick for. You need to make sure that people indicate what is PII data. This is not something people do voluntarily. It has to be guarded. So in this case, how do they do that? In our case, they just put a tag, meta tag on a column. This column contains PII data, personally identifiable information. It could also be other sensitive data, of course. It's the task of the owner to make sure that all the output that they generate is labeled. It's also the task of the owner to control which downstream product actually gets access to that sensitive data. Sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. And it's also our task from the platform part to supply the right tools to do that. We've seen approaches where people invent their own hashing algorithm to obfuscate data. That's not a good idea. Use standardized things, and we offer them from the platform part. So provide the right tools. And then again, you get traceability. You can see, there's PII data there. Here it's anonymized, so everything else is safe. Again, you get insights. Let's zoom out from the castle approach. Previously, we had this, our nice castle. We basically did two things. We shifted some of the ownership to the top, to the AI products, the data products, the BI products. And you also have reusable data products in that layer. But at the bottom, instead of just offering tools, data lakes, vector databases, we now offer a real platform. That platform contains, again, still tools, but also all the processes. You can ask for a new data product. You can ask for access. You don't have to email anymore. So we developed a full platform with insights. We can learn about the behavior, and that means we can iterate and fine-tune the rules where needed. Plus, we have no more Rudies. Rudy is completely gone, except for the pull request reviews he still needs to do, but we eliminated Rudy. And we also successfully shifted from the left side to the right side. We now have not a toolbox anymore, a platform. We are not in the loop anymore when people ask data access. It's fully decentralized now. So what did we do to make sure that we fix the 5 dimensions? We made a split between data products and a real data platform. Plus, building that platform gave us extra insights, which we can use to iterate. So, because this is positively influenced, we have good speed, good ROI, and trust again, and we can continue to grow. What's the takeaway of this? So we've seen we want high speed, high ROI, and high trust when developing AI products. Data governance, the pancake story, gave us the 5 abilities: discoverability, accessibility, understandability, reliability, and compliance. Why is it important? Because your data can leak. And as we've also discussed before, it's really difficult to test these GenAI models. So you have to control the 5 abilities. The answer to the second question, how do we scale sustainably? We started off with that graph and saw that at some point you will end up in a spaghetti mode where you don't know anything anymore. To avoid that, we have applied 3 things. We have the product thinking, the circles. You think about data products as a whole. This will also create roles, ownership, and also responsibilities. We applied platform thinking by offering the right tools to support the processes. We don't give the processes to people, we give the tools, and that's now built into the platform. And finally, doing it this way gave us insights into what's going on, and it allows us to iterate on our approach. This is a continuous approach. You cannot just install governance and buy Colibra and be done with it. No. You have to manage it effectively. All right. So, question for you. Whose team can build a chatbot in less than a week? You can raise hands. I had to ask this question actually before. Now you're maybe demotivated. Okay. Would you dare to release it publicly after 1 week? So there's one person, so that's, and you develop a Gen AI product, right? Yeah, okay, so that's good that you dare to release that. So these are the questions that you should ask, and you should also ask the platform, the data that I'm using in my organization, is it ready to support all of these AI products? We have a test to check your data maturity. You can check that out, but that will indicate how good you are in developing new products. So that's it. That's our governance I mentioned for tonight. Thanks for listening. And any questions, fire off. Questions?
How do you make it visible to also budget holders what the cost is of your spaghetti? Because often people show an ROI for a product, so it's easier to calculate the cost of the spaghetti, and investing in the platform, that's something else.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because often when the business people start to complain, you're already way down in the red line and things start costing a ton of money. That's a difficult one. I think what we try to do with organizations is to make things as visible as possible. So I'm getting a software update here. Okay. So an example of that is this graph. I showed you a small part of the graph, but in reality, there's like 200 of these little things. And when people see that, they're already like, whoa, this is a lot. So to make things visible, that helps. That's, to me, the first step. Show the pain, show where it is visible, and also ask questions. You have to talk with the stakeholders, the managers, and see if they really understand what's going on in there. If you ask a question like, do you know where all the PI data lives? They will not be able to answer it. We often see a big gap between what business thinks is going on and what is actually going on at the development part. It's still difficult to make that clear. In my opinion, making it visible somehow will help. And also putting a price on these things. If you can put a price on that, that would help. How much effort is being done maintaining these things? Which products are no longer supported? What is a high risk? For example, the cleaning part here is a high risk. If nobody is working on that, that means everything downstream will at some point fail. And at the end use cases, this is something where you can typically create some ROI, because that's your output and that's user facing. And this is just one means to do that. Do you have any suggestions on how to approach that yourself?
No, it's also, like you said, going to a more product-oriented organization. There's a lot of change into it as well.
Yes, yes.
And you don't do it in one day. You need some small successes.
Indeed. It's change management in the end, and what I showed is basically small steps to make those changes, yeah.
But I don't have the link in there.
That's the difficult part, that's right. Any more questions?
These things that you're showing, is this from different products that you typically use, or is something you developed internally, or?
Everything I showed, I think, is something we developed.
Okay, but like a standard product or something custom for one client?
We have bundled some of our learnings into a product that we are developing. So, also for data access control, for example, to request access to these data sources, you want to make that visible. We are trying to bundle all the basic principles into one product because we see there's a lot of value in that. Also to make things visible, to quantify things, to give insights, that really helps. But what I showed you today was the first version that we tried at clients, and we saw there is a lot of potential in there as well. And this was not something we did for 10 years or so. So what you saw here was built in a year. And that was also the takeaway for us. We don't try to do governance by dealing with it for 2 years and then having only a process. We also have processes, but we try to implement it as we go. And that was also difficult to explain to the organization because they're like, yeah, do the governance and then it's done, right? No, this is a V0.1 of our governance process, but we also have it implemented. And it was also change management to let them see that you need to iterate. Iteration is important also for governance. Implementation is crucial to get this done. Yes?
If an organization comes to you and you just ask, look, we think we have a lot of data and we want to try to get some value out of it. What would be your approach? First, try to use cases to see what you get, or come up with a data strategy, just everything in parallel. What would be a good approach for that?
So if there's no use cases, I would say try to understand what are your end use cases first. Your end use cases, that's where your ROI is. If you would cut off the bottom of this chart, it has no value at all because there's nobody using your data. So building that for 2 years will have a very bad ROI and a high chance of failure. So I would recommend to identify what are the key use cases, but that is actually a strategy exercise. What is strategic to the company to deliver first? It's a prioritization exercise. And then once you have that, I would recommend to go for your first solution and to go to production with it, and then iterate and also expand. But it depends on the organization, but I would not recommend to just do the whole governance thing, make a bunch of pipelines, and then do nothing with it, because that's also often a pitfall. It is a lot of upfront investment that you would need. No more questions? All right. Thank you all. I will give the word to Michael to close the session.
Thank you, Jonny. Very, very inspiring. I'm actually between you and maybe a last piece of pizza or a few more drinks. I'm back with one quick questionnaire, and that's then also the last step of tonight. Everybody is in? Yeah? Okay. Misschien een checken naar mijn muis. Nee, je moet even teruggaan, sorry. Ja, dit is het. Ja. Bedankt, Hannes. So first of all, I'm curious, if you return to home tonight, you return to work tomorrow, what next step will you be taking with regards to GenAI? That's honest. Okay. I see focus on value. So happy to read that, because I think that's one of the red lines that we try to embed in our story. Metadata also remembered. I'm not sure the tool-based versus platform-based organization, is that referring to moving from a bag of tools to a platform with processes, accelerators, templates? I guess that is what you're referring to. Okay. Thank you. Second but last question. In your plans, like there's multiple hurdles, but what is the next one you want to jump over? Okay. I think we have some engineers in the room. Implementation into integration, good to read that. Yeah, ethical and regulatory matters, we didn't touch that much, right? So I think there's much more dimensions to data governance and to GenAI than we have touched today. Access management, ethics, privacy, there's only so much you can cover, but I agree, it's definitely important and maybe worth another event.
It's a bit part of the trust, of course. The trust is a big bag of things.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. We value feedback, obviously. So, yeah, we are keen on getting an indication of how much the different sessions helped you, inspired you. So we take it home for the next time. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. Thank you. With that, I also want to thank Hannes, Frederik, Jonny for your brain power, And I think you put it all together and made a very inspiring story. So really cool. So may I ask a small applause for the presenter?